Welcome in, everyone, to the ESG application webinar. We are just a minute or so ahead of time here, so we will give time for other folks to join. Just to let you know, this meeting is being recorded, and that recording did start at the entry to the meeting. We will have some time at the end to take questions, and we can also end the recording and take questions as well. We will give just another minute for folks to join in. We've got a good group of folks already, so thank you for joining us. All right, well, we will get rolling, and other folks that join in can be welcomed in and join us at that point. I want to welcome you all to the fiscal year 2026 Emergency Solutions Grant Request for Applications webinar. I am Jim Flatford. I'm your Formula Grants Manager. For the webinar, we also have Nilufar Asghari. She's our Community Services Grant Analyst working on HOPWA and ESG with me. So this is your Formula Grants team. Want to take a moment here, since I've got you all, just to recognize and thank you all for the work that you do on a daily basis. It's all hard work. Sometimes it's thankless work, but we all at IHCDA and in the community services team are very thankful for you all. So you are the boots on the ground doing this work. We all see our role as helping to make these complicated federal grants as easy to understand and as easy to operate as we can, so that you can do the good and important work of serving folks. So that's my little soapbox here at the start. I do want to clarify too that this application is for service providers, 501c3s that are providing services to homeless folks. This isn't an application for direct individual assistance. So if you had joined this hoping that this was for individual assistance, it is not. But you are welcome to reach out to our office and we can route you to organizations that might be able to help in your situation. So with that, I believe I'm ready to move forward. Go over our agenda for the day. I have this booked until 3:30. We will likely be done before that. I wanted to allow enough time to go through everything and enough time for questions. So that's where we stand. So we're going through our introduction now. We're going to go over organizational eligibility to receive funding. We will cover the ESG project types and provide some a little bit of specifics behind client eligibility within those types, along with eligible expenses for those projects. We will spend some time kind of covering some front end of the application, and then we will actually break from the PowerPoint and I will pull the application up and we will just walk through it and answer, provide what we're looking for on those questions. And then provide time at the end again to answer any questions you have. And feel free as we're going through, if you have a question, throw it in the comments and the chat, and we will address those if we're able to as we see them. If not, we will look through those at the end. I did see a question fly through. Yes, and I appreciate that question. This and Nilufar is already in the chat answering it. So thank you. We are recording. This recording will be posted on our website and along with the slides from this session. And I'll give you a quick preview of our website when we break out of our webinar as well. All right, so a little bit of an overview and background for this program, this project. So here at IHCDA, we receive an allocation for ESG of just under $4 million. We had a tiny little increase this year, so maybe it's on the trend up, but we are still just a tick under 4 million. There are caps that are embedded within the process that keep us limited on what we can do for each project type. Admin for the entire award is capped at 7.5%, and we cannot fund any shelter and street outreach over 60% over the entire award. So 40% of the award must go to rapid rehousing and homeless prevention efforts. We know that there's an endless need for shelter support, but one way I look at this is I heard, ages ago that, shelter isn't home, and we want folks to get home. Shelter's a process in that journey, and it's an important step. But I kind of look at that restriction as, we're wanting to make sure people get home as well through this. This is a formula grant, and applicants that pass threshold requirements as well as meet the minimum score will be allocated funding. This is a competitive process as well, and the applications will receive scores, and those scores will dictate that level of funding. There's no maximum or minimum cap on your request, but do remember you have to show evidence here at the front end, and then after the program year, you have to report on your 100% match for the funds you expend. So, you can meet that match in a couple ways. That can be a cash match, that can be services that you have an MOU with another organization to provide, or that can be volunteer time or donations. There's a number of ways to meet that match, but all your award would have to be met at 100% match. So it kind of self-caps your request to a point. And we do receive more requests for funding than we can honor. We receive about double what we receive in funding and can award out. So we are not able to meet every request. You'll have this reminder a few times as we go through the presentation that the application is due by 5 p.m. on May 29th. So there'll be some reminders in the tail end. Work ahead. Be sure that you're prepared for anything that happens to your. We're all dealing with emergencies as funds emergency shelter. So emergency could pop up there on the 28th. So if we can, just work ahead and make sure you meet that deadline. It's very important. Okay, the timeline for our RFA process. The application and RFA process was announced and released on May 4th. Here we sit on May 14th for the overview session. The applications are due May 29th by 5 p.m. And then tentatively, once those applications are turned in, behind the scenes, we are going to get to work on reviewing and scoring and putting those funding recommendations together. We have a pretty tight timeline to meet to be able to present to the board on June 25th, and we're going to do everything we can to meet that deadline. Once we present to the board, we will turn around and make those announcements known. So if we're able to follow our ideal schedule here, you will be notified on what your funding award is slightly before that spending period starts. Now contracts, the timing on that is to be determined. We have not received our funding agreement from HUD, and that's something that would have to take place before we can get into making our awards to all the recipients. Reminder that spending period does start July 1, regardless of the execution date that that we have on your agreements. Sorry, I'm already catching myself reading the chat and trying to keep going. So I'm going to try to stay laser focused in here. How we will evaluate your responses. We will look at our capacity to meet your request. That is the first thing. We're going to look at, does the applicant, meet the funding eligibility criteria? The financial capacity and readiness that you express in your application. We will be looking at use percentage. How much did you use from last year's grant? And that will be put up against other applicants. So you will be measured against your peers, essentially. If you're a new applicant, these points where it talks about prior performance, you won't lose those points in the review process. We have a way to make sure that that is equaled out for you. Then we will be looking at your outcomes from your capers. There's some questions in here that give you a chance to make some explanations as to why your data might look like it does. But that's why we're here, is to get people housed, to send them off to positive housing destinations. So we're going to be looking at that. What's your percentage for folks that exit your program? What's the percentage that are exiting to a positive destination? And again, you'll be ranked against the other applicants and scored accordingly. And then there's ample opportunities for you to explain your program, hit the highlights, and we will be scoring those as well. All right.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So I'll be talking about the eligibility criterion that subrecipients must meet in order to be eligible for some amount of ESG funding. Okay, so when you look at this slide, it really includes a summary of the most pertinent threshold requirements. The full list is in the RFA narrative, which Jim will drop in the chat, or I will drop in the chat, depending on who has a free moment. When you look at this list on the slide, you're going to see that some squares are in green and some are in blue. All of the criterion that are in green, it's very much a very cut and dry threshold requirements. You either are a 501c3 and are able to demonstrate that, or you're not a 501c3 status organization or are not able to demonstrate it. Same thing with, active UEI number, being registered with the Indiana Secretary of State, and being able to show that your program clients meet 100% of your program clients meet HUD's definition of homelessness as defined in page 4 of the RFA and later on throughout this presentation. Everything that's in the blue, we will either A, be able to verify on the back end through materials we already have from you, or B, you will be certifying that you meet that criterion when you provide your signature on the RFA response. So for example, you also have to show that you provide services in the Indiana balance of state. Our jurisdiction, which is the balance of state, covers every county within the state of Indiana except Marion County, because Marion County has its own separate ESG grant with its own continuum of care. Additionally, you would have to give us some indication of how you coordinate with your regional planning council, and we will go through what that looks like on the application. We will ask you to certify one way or another that you do not have any unresolved findings from either IHCDA or HUD. Now, when we say unresolved findings, that means a finding that is not being addressed. If your finding is being addressed, then you do have room in your application to talk about this. Additionally, you will have to keep in mind the requirements to have financial statement standards in line with 2 CFR 200, which are the Federal General Accounting Principles.
All right. I'm going to cover some of the client eligibility items for services. And again, we're giving a broad overview of these items. More information can be found in that RFA that I dropped the link for in our program manuals that are on our ESG webpage. But some general notes, some of our projects have income requirements. Those are going to vary by the project type, the funding stream. You do have to, the projects and the clients that you're serving do have to be physically located within the Indiana bounds of state jurisdiction, which again is every Indiana county outside of Marion. So we have, hopefully you're familiar with the 4 categories of homelessness as defined by HUD. Each of our project types are going to rely on different definitions, different HUD definitions for eligibility. So you need to keep an eye on which funding stream you're using and making sure that your clients are eligible under that stream. Here are those 4 categories of homelessness. Again, the definitions of these are in your RFA narrative, but I will go through those here in a moment as well. We have category 1's literally homeless, cat 2, imminent risk of homelessness. Category 3 is homelessness under other federal statutes. This is typically for homeless youth. So if somebody is deemed homeless under another federal program, then that does carry over to ours. Typically, if they meet that, they're already going to be meeting category 1, 2, or maybe 4. So we don't see that too often. And then category 4 is really a cross-cutting category for folks that are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. That category makes folks, typically makes those folks eligible under the other categories. And I will explain that a little as we go on. So again, category 1, literally homeless. This is the HUD definition for that category. The individual or family lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. It is not a place for public habitation that they're staying in. They're staying out on the street. They're in a car. They're living, it just not meant for public habitation. They might be exiting an institution. That would qualify them as well under literally homeless. Category 2 is imminently at risk of homelessness. This is an individual or family who currently has housing, but they are within 14 days of losing that housing, that residence. So they've received either an eviction notice or have been contacted by their landlord and told, I'm filing eviction within 14 days. And that client also, has no subsequent residence identified or lacks the ability to get another residence. Category 4, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, is any individual or family who is fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, has no other residence, and lacks resources or support to find another residence. And then here's how our ESG project types lay out and connect with those definitions of homelessness, those categories. Our shelter projects are going to be serving category 1 and 4. A little note on that is that at the shelter, the shelter folks are going to be making sure that those folks are completing a chat assessment, getting them on that coordinated entry list. That's not something that has to be done before they enter shelter, but something that needs to be done as they're in your shelter. Street outreach, that serves category 1 and 4. Rapid rehousing, which is one of the housing rental assistance programs, that serves category 1 and 4. The referrals for those programs must come from coordinated entry and from that system. Homeless prevention, that is for category 2 and 4.
Okay, so in addition to the 4 categories of homelessness that we've discussed and which categories you would have to fall under in order to be eligible for assistance, there are some other caveats with each funding stream. With emergency shelter, there is not an income requirement whatsoever. So whether they make $0.00 or they have an income that's high, as long as they are literally homeless according to the HUD definition of homelessness, or fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, then they would technically meet the income requirement for the emergency shelter program. Additionally, if there is a individual with a child or a family with children in it, keep in mind that the age of the child must not be used as a basis for denying shelter to a family. Moreover, as Jim previously mentioned, once they are in your shelter, you've confirmed eligibility and they're receiving the services that ESG Shelter offers. We do require that each client is able to have their chat assessment completed, so then they can then be bridged to coordinated entry and be able to get access to the rapid rehousing component of the ESG program. For street outreach, as we mentioned earlier, they must meet category 1 and in some cases category 4. There is no income requirement similar to ESG shelter. The chat assessment is encouraged but not required in street outreach. With rapid rehousing, it serves both category 1 and 4, as Jim mentioned previously. There is no income requirement, but with that said, if you are serving a household with income, they should be paying 30% of their adjusted gross income towards the rent of their unit. Households without income are not required to contribute financially to their rent until an increase in income occurs. And that's where your rent and income calculation would have to be either redone or otherwise re-verified to ensure that you're able to account for that increase. If you have someone with 0 income, then you would have them complete the 0 income affidavit so that you can verify that they do not have income. In this program, as Jim had previously mentioned, all clients being served through rapid rehousing must come from coordinated entry referrals. This is a requirement, I believe, per federal regulation. For homelessness prevention, this serves category 2, imminent risk of homelessness, and category 4, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. The really important thing to know about homeless prevention, if you want to remember the difference between rapid rehousing and homeless prevention is the program that prevents someone from becoming homeless. Rapid rehousing is the program that helps those that are already homeless and we're trying to rehouse. With regards to homeless prevention, household income must be at or below 30% AMI. That's area median income. That income level must be reevaluated every 3 months per programmatic requirements at the federal level. If you have a household with income, they should be paying 30% of their adjusted gross income into the rent that um, the unit costs. Now, for homeless prevention, the key difference is not only just with the category of homelessness that a client has to meet, it's also with where they um, are, how they are connected to services. So, as we mentioned earlier, rapid rehousing clients have to come through coordinated entry referrals. With homeless prevention, you are instead required to utilize a participant prioritization plan or policy. This is a policy that is created by your organization itself. It is a policy that you should consistently follow. And we ask for you to attach that policy if you are applying for homeless prevention funding. Okay, now we will start talking about eligible expenses in the program. As we have discussed earlier, if nothing else, there's four project types. ESG funds shelters, it funds street outreach efforts, rapid rehousing programs, and homeless prevention programs. And the way that ESG Shelter describes its eligible expenses, it's really divided into two buckets. The two buckets are really essential services and operations. Essential services refer to expenses that are directly impacting a client. And as we mentioned, it serves those who meet category 1 of homelessness. The eligible expenses highlighted on the slide are case management, which could be the salary of a caseworker working directly with shelter clients, child care. So if you're paying for a licensed daycare center for the child care of your shelter clients, that's eligible. Educational services, the cost of books, instructional materials, literacy training, so that your clients are able to gain the necessary skills that they need to both survive and thrive. Employment assistance and job training. This is especially useful if your shelter clients express interest in working towards a certification that licenses them for a specific job. So any program that's looking at a vocational license, a certificate, job training, you can use ESG shelter funds for that. Outpatient health services, you can use that to pay for outpatient doctor examination, health screenings, preventative medical care, medication, even in some cases, dental care. We also allow you to use ESG shelter for legal services so long as it impacts a client's housing outcomes only. These should only pay for legal advice from licensed attorneys, hourly fees, and there are a couple of fees also within legal services that are eligible as well, kind of as one-offs, but the bottom line with that is that if nothing else, the legal issue at hand has to impact a client's housing outcome only. Life skills training. This is for clients trying to learn how to do a budget, manage money, maybe resolve some conflict if they encounter conflict in life, being able to shop for food and make decisions at the grocery store. This is not something that has to be required through, you're not exclusively required to provide this, but if you would like to and you have a program like this, you can use ESG funding for that. Mental health services are also eligible especially if you're helping your client get connected to outpatient treatment by licensed professionals. You can also pay for substance abuse treatment services. This can allow for outpatient treatment for up to 30 days per federal regulation. You can also pay for transportation costs. This allows you to pay for travel to and from essential service activities. You could pay for bus tokens, shelter vehicles, rideshare. The only caveat with rideshare is that the cost needs to be reasonable and justifiable. So as long as, if nothing else, you can show that the transportation was for access to essential services, then that would be more likely than not eligible. For shelter operations, these are all expenses that are associated with the main operation of your shelter building and the maintenance of that. So every expense that is written on the slide, those are all line items in your budget. Same thing with the previous slide. If you were to spend your funding on equipment, you'd be able to purchase new computers, printers, copy machines, even a microwave for a shelter kitchen, and anything else that is a permanent fixture within the shelter building. For insurance, this would be the insurance of a shelter building. So you can also use the insurance line item to pay for auto insurance as long as the vehicle is owned or leased specifically for your shelter program. We have a line item for supplies. The supplies line item allows you to buy office supplies like, pens, paper, folders, even if you need that, staplers, scissors, little organizing cubbies, if not that. You can also use your supplies to buy cleaning supplies for a shelter building. So if there's for whatever reason, you need to buy cleaning supplies to disinfect surfaces, really reduce the spread of disease, infectious disease, then that would be the line item for you. Food, if you are providing food to your shelter clients, please keep in mind that the food should only be provided for ESG shelter clients, not for surprise people that are not ESG eligible. Let me look one more time. Shelter staff. So if you have staff members that are not doing security, not necessarily doing maintenance on a building, and not also your case manager, then 10% of your award can be spent on the salaries for other tasks or projects that are directly affected with your shelter operations. For security, this is for the protection of your building. So any expenses associated with security, like a security system, or even if you're paying for staff to do security, that is eligible. Maintenance. So really with maintenance, keep in mind that you want your shelter building to be a place that is safe and habitable for everyone. So if nothing else, you can pay for a whole variety of expenses ranging from carpet cleaning in the shelter rooms, fixing plumbing issues if there's a leak. You can also use the where was I? The maintenance line item to kill bed bugs. We've gotten some guidance on that from HUD recently, so that's been very useful. If you can justify in one way or another that it affects the safety of shelter residents, there may be a way to make it eligible. One thing I will note, though, is that anything that goes into the world of renovations or rehabilitation would not be eligible under ESG right now. Finally, it looks like I would be remiss if I did not talk about the rent and utilities of a shelter building. So keep in mind with the shelter building itself, you can pay for the lease, you can pay for the rent, whatever is a part of that. The only thing is you cannot use this line item to buy out your shelter building or to pay a mortgage of your shelter building. For utilities, you can use that to pay for your shelter's gas, water, sewage, or electric bills for shelter building. And I haven't put this on the slide, and I don't think we've always had the ability to clarify this. But if you are in a situation where you have a client but no room in shelter, you can provide them a hotel or motel voucher so long as you can show that no shelter was available at the time.
All right, thank you, Neelufar. I'm going to go over to street outreach and cover that section. So we've got 5 line items, 5 eligible expense categories under street outreach. Engagement would include the cost of activities to locate, identify, and build relationships with people who are unsheltered and engaging them for the purpose of either providing immediate support and connection to resources and for that long-term housing placement. This line item would cover the initial assessment, addressing those folks' urgent needs, meals, clothing, blankets, toiletries, things like that. And again, the time to connect them to the resources. The case management line is kind of the prototypical case management, the cost of assessing housing and service needs, arranging and coordinating services, monitoring the delivery of those services to meet the needs of that program participant. All of those things would fall under that category. Emergency health services, this line item would cover assessing a participant's health problems, developing a treatment plan, assisting the program participant in understanding their health needs, providing direct or assisting them with obtaining medical treatment. So the line, these funds can only be used if there is not already an appropriate service out there. Like typically, if for our folks in larger cities, there might be a federally qualified health center just down the road that you can link them up and then not have to spend any of your dollars. This line, emergency health services and emergency mental health services, are only meant to be accessed when there isn't another service that can cover that in your community. And you must have documentation of that lack of the other service. So again, I mentioned emergency mental health services. Eligible treatment under that would be assessing their mental health issues and developing a treatment plan, helping them understand their mental health needs, providing connection to that treatment, and providing medication and follow-up services. Again, only to be used if that service isn't in the community. The transportation line can cover the costs for your outreach workers, your social workers, your medical professionals, other service providers that are out in the field spending money traveling. This can be through if you have a agency-owned vehicle, or through paying mileage reimbursements to these folks, to your workers. Eligible costs, again, this can also cover not only your staff's travel, but a participant's travel on public transportation. This could be your staff transporting folks to emergency housing or other service meetings. Again, the mileage for a personal car would be eligible, as well as costs for an agency vehicle. Okay, then we get over to our housing programs, the housing side of this, and somewhat similar to how shelter was broken down into smaller categories. You'll see that with our rapid rehousing and homeless prevention budget line items. There'll be a financial assistance category, and then there'll be a financial services category. There's no stipulation on what you would have to kind of weight your budget between those, but it's just kind of how they have those categories organized in the regulations. Now we're talking about rapid rehousing and homeless prevention lines together because they're all the same line items, and a lot of them the same eligible expenses, really to a T. It's back to how that client enters the program. Are they already homeless and they've come through the coordinated entry system, or are they housed and at risk of losing that housing and contacting your agency and going through your prioritization policy? It's kind of that entry on whether they're rapid rehousing or homeless prevention, but the eligible expenses, they are the same for both. So I will walk through those for you. So these funds can be used to pay housing owners, utility companies, and other third parties for the following costs. Rental assistance, that line would cover program participant assistance with rent for up to 24 months during a 3-year rolling period. Our grants are 12-month length typically, but the eligible length of time in the program is 24 months across 3 years. Another line that gets taken that our programs take advantage of often is the rental arrears line. This line can be used to help clear up a past arrearage that a client has that's preventing them from being housed. They've got an eviction on their record, they still owe money to a prior landlord, and it's preventing them from getting placed in an apartment. Nobody wants to house them because of that. This line can be used to take care of up to 6 months of an arrearage. And that's for rental arrears. If it's gone through the courts, that can have some of those court fees wrapped up into it. So this can really clear a barrier for folks, getting them into housing and preventing them from running into that barrier in the future. The one caveat there is you have to clear the barrier up. Now that can be done just with these funds or in partnership with others. If somebody's got more than 6 months of arrearages, or if you just don't have enough money in your line to cover the full cost, you would need to partner with others in your community, maybe township trustee, whoever, to come in partnership with you and help clear up that barrier. You can't just say, hey, we're going to take 6 months off of it and now you're in a better spot. It really does have to remove that from being an issue for them. Moving costs can be covered. So this is really cool. It could cover costs such as a truck rental or hiring a moving company. It can also pay for temporary storage fees for up to 3 months if the client needs to have some things in storage. That does have to happen. You can't do any accrual of that 3 months until after they begin receiving assistance. So it can't be you're helping them with a unit they've already had or something like that. One of the caveats there. And then we can't do any payments of storage fees arrearages with ESG funds. Utility deposits can be covered with these funds, and those can be the funds can be used for a standard deposit that the utility company requires for all customers. And deposits are limited to the utilities that we'll talk about here as we go through the next line item, which is utility payments or arrears. This line item can cover up to 24 months, again, that length of service for a utility or for a ESG client, of utilities payments that's per service. And then you're able to use this line item to deal with up to 6 months of utility payment arrearages if that is endangering their housing stability. If they're in danger of getting their gas turned off, and if their gas gets turned off, it's stipulated in their lease that now they're evicted or in danger of that. You could utilize this line to use arrearage assistance for utilities to make sure that that doesn't happen. And that is you can go back 6 months for each different utility that they owe that arrearage on. Now, these these assistance, the utility assistance and the deposit and arrearage, all of that can only be provided if a program participant or a member of the same household has those accounts in their name. And that proof needs to be in your documentation, and the lease would need to also stipulate that that client is responsible for making those payments. The eligible utility services are gas, electric, water, and sewage. And again, just a reminder that that assistance cannot go over 24 months. Okay, rental application fees are also a line that these funds can cover, and there's also no limit on that. If a client is having to pay a fee, they go look at a place, doesn't work out either on their end or on the landlord's side, you can go look at another unit and pay for that application fee. Security deposits are a line that can be covered. The funds can pay for a security deposit that is equal to no more than 2 months rent. So if they're requiring 1 month rent, you're good. 2 months, you can cover up to that, the 2 months value of rent. Last month's rent can be covered with this specific line item if it's necessary to obtain housing. So if the landlord is requiring security deposit and last month's rent, at the start, you can access this expense line to cover that. And that makes sense. It's last month's rent. It shouldn't exceed the amount of a month's rent, and does count into that 24-month cap on assistance. And then case management is going to be required. Anytime that you're accessing these funds and providing this assistance, case management once a month is required. Now we get to the financial services. A way to think about the difference between the financial assistance and services: is it money that's going out to assist somebody, or is it money that you're using to pay your staff to provide to serve the client? So a number of things can be covered under this category, and housing search and placement is one of the big ones that we see. This covers the time that your staff is spending assisting that program participant in locating, obtaining, and retaining suitable permanent housing. So that can be the assessment of their housing barriers and needs and preferences, developing an action plan with them, doing that housing search, doing the outreach and negotiation with landlords. Maybe you're helping the client submit those rental application and understand the lease. All of those things would come under the housing search and placement. If you're dealing with the requirements for habitability, lead-based paint, rent reasonableness, all of those type of items would fall under that housing search and placement. Those are the front end items with that. The next big category we see used is the housing stability case management. Again, this is your case management that's going on for these clients. Items that can be covered under this is the time spent using coordinated entry to evaluate that client, determine if they're a good fit for your program, doing initial evaluations to know if they're eligible, documenting that third-party eligibility, putting that case file together, that client file, excuse me, helping to connect them to other services that they would qualify for. All of the time done serving that client with case management would be captured under this, as well as doing any reevaluations, doing that income certification, things like that. Now, the caveat under this is this line item cannot be used for more than 30 days. So you've got a month of access to this prior to that person being housed. So you start using case management while they're doing their housing search. Okay, 30 days later, they have not yet hit a placement. You cannot use your ESG funds until they're again in a place after that 30 days, and then you would come back and be able to provide that case management. You can still provide it out of your own funding or another source, but ESG has this weird rule. They don't want just a bunch of case management going on while they're not being housed. Mediation is another category here that the funds can cover. This is between a program participant and the landlord or someone they're living with. If the mediation is necessary to prevent that participant from losing their housing or running into an issue that's going to endanger their residents. Legal services can be covered. These can cover landlord and tenant matters if you need to pull in some attorneys to deal with these things. These should be necessary to resolve a legal problem that's preventing their housing or endangering their housing. Again, just like the other legal services line under shelter, it needs to be, addressing their housing issues. Credit repair, if that's something that's deemed necessary as that case manager is working with the client, you can use funding for credit repair to either hook them up with a professional, or if your staff has skills in that area, to work with them to do budgeting, managing their money, accessing their credit report, and resolving any credit issues that might be on that report. You can access that line. And in the administration line, I talked at the front of the presentation that we have a 7.5% cap for administration. Where you get to access that bucket is under rapid rehousing and homeless prevention, because we know it takes a bit more admin. It's a heavier lift compared to street outreach and shelter. So you're able to capture some of your overhead time, some of the time and costs that can't be directly connected to a client, but are necessary for your program. Those things would land here. So if you're preparing program budgets or schedules, supervising somebody that's providing direct service, items like that would be captured under this line. All right, we will move right along here. And Neelafar is going to give you a couple tidbits about the application before we take a look at it.
All right. So first, I want to say I know that we have a lot of information about eligible expenses, and there's definitely a lot of questions about what your funding can and can't be used for. Um, we have more detailed information on IHCDA's ESG page, which I have now put in the chat for you to take a look at our shelter manual, our street outreach manual, and our rapid rehousing and homeless prevention manual. We're working on updates to those materials. We have some updated forms and documentation on the website as well, so you can see what current subrecipients are using or are supposed to be using. One thing I'll say, this portion of the presentation that we're now at will focus on the general features of the application, and then Jim will go through the application itself. So the really cool thing about JotForm this year, we've enabled a setting that allows you to save and come back later. So you are not required to have to sit through and do the application all in one sitting. Yay! So you do have that option. You also have an option to review your answers before submission. So at the end of the application, once you get to the certification and signature section, there should be a button below that tells you that you would want to review. Just be sure you don't accidentally click on the submit button, because then once you submit, then you can't really review and take advantage of that feature. Finally, the form does have some conditional logic, and Conditional logic really just influences which questions show up or are hidden and which questions are required or not required. Throughout the ESG application this year, the conditional logic largely affects the application questions within each funding stream. So if you indicate that you will be applying for funding, then you'll see all of the questions. If you indicate that you are not applying for a specific funding stream, then you will not be required to apply for a funding stream that you are not applying for, and you will not even see the questions on that JotForm platform. There are a couple of other issues, not issues, but more so things to keep in mind with conditional logic. So in the beginning of the application or close to the beginning, we do ask for your ESG program contact or even contacts if you have multiple staff that you would like us to be in contact with. With that said, you can provide up to 3. The conditional logic allows you to indicate how many you are providing to us based on the question, do you have an ESG program contact to add? If you say yes, then it should show. If you say no, then you're not going to be prompted to add more and more contacts. You'll only be prompted the amount of contacts that you say you would like to have added until you reach 3 or until you opt to only add less than 3. Moving on to the next slide, I wanted to show an example of how to save the application, but I thought the best way would be to write it out with words and then show the visual screenshots in the next slide. So first, when you are filling out the JotForm, go to the bottom right-hand page and part of the page, and then look for the button that says Save. The Save button is shaded in white or clear, and the Next button is shaded in blue. So if you would like to save your application, do not click Next because it might not do what you want it to do in the way that you would like JotForm to save it for you. On the next screen, you are either going to click on Skip Create an Account or Sign Up with Email. If you sign up with email, you will end up creating your own JotForm account, which would keep track of other forms that you submit via JotForm. You are not required to create an account, so if you want to skip that, you are more than welcome to do that. You will type in your email address, and JotForm will send you the link to the application that you've been working on. And when you click on that send portion, you can also copy the link and store it somewhere else in your computer. One thing that I will tell you, and it's because we've learned this the hard way using JotForm last year, if you lose the link, you'll have to redo the progress you've made on your application. We do not have access to an incomplete application or to an application in progress. So if you like, just be very careful with where you put the link to that particular draft, because we will only have access to your submitted application. So as I promised, step 1, if you look over to the portion where it says Save and Next, I circled the button that says Save. Then from there, you will see the screen that shows the IHCDA logo, the orange Sign Up with Email button, and also the Skip Create an Account button. You would click on either the Sign Up with Email button in orange or the slightly smaller Skip Create an Account link. Regardless of whether you click on the orange button or the text, you will then see the screen showing submission saved as a draft. From there, you can enter your email address and then click on the blue send button. And then you can also click on Get Draft Link if you would like to have another fail-safe to put the link somewhere else, either in a Word document or send it to someone else in your organization as well.
All right. So the materials you'll need when you apply, you'll need to complete the application at the job form link that we'll take a look at. Then there's a number of attachments that you have required. So proof of your 501c3 status, evidence of your UEI number, an active UEI number from sam.gov, evidence confirmation that you're registered and current with the Indiana Secretary of State. There's some financial documentation, so your 990, your year-to-date balance sheet, income statement, cash flow, and financial statements. A lot of things are listed there, and we know that we have a lot of agencies that are at different spots on the spectrum as far as finance levels. Submit your financials as you have them. If you don't use all of these documents, submit what you do use so that we can evaluate just kind of your financial situation. This is new this year, so if you do have questions on these these attachments, reach out to us. We've already had a number of them, and I'll tell you, Nilufar and I are not accountants, so we typically have to go ask a question to someone as well. So feel free to reach out. We also need a list of your board of directors, and that would be their name, their affiliation with their contact information, just your board roster list. We also want to take a look at your board of director bylaws. That's new this year. Another new addition that we wanted to look at is your organization chart for your ESG folks. We understand, some big organizations that might be just a little portion. If you want to submit your whole your whole staffing chart and then highlighting the ESG portion, do that. Or if you just want to submit your ESG, or if you're a shelter of one staff, that's pretty easy to, hey, I'm doing it all. That's just, we just want to see what staff are involved. Your general liability insurance documentation to evidence policy. We don't need your entire policy, just that cover page, often called an accord. And then that might also show the fidelity bond insurance. If not, just a cover page just showing that you have insurance, what are the different coverages, what levels they're at, so we can know that you meet that requirement. Same with the proof of workers' compensation. There is a spot if you are going to be using ESG funds for auto transportation, if you're going to be claiming any lease payments, or paying for your auto insurance, or using that transportation line, we do need to see proof of the auto insurance attached as well. Okay, a couple of additional ones for shelter requests, and I got a little note on this as well. We need a fire inspection report. We have heard that some folks are having issues. Used to be those would come from the local fire department. They would come out and take a look, check things out. We're hearing some pushback on that, so that report can come from your whoever is providing your fire extinguisher kind of alarm service. We need to have a checkoff that says, hey, we've got up-to-date alarms, we've got exits that are clear, items like that. If you're having trouble with the time requirement, we ask, it says we want that within the last 6 months. Reach out to us, and we can help you with that, and as long as we know what you're dealing with. With the health department inspection, that is only if your shelter serves food. So if it's kind of, people can bring food in, put it in the fridge and self-serve, you don't need to mess with that. But if your agency, if your shelter is serving food, then we need to have that health inspection. And then, as Nilüfer covered earlier, if you are asking for homeless prevention funding, then you would need to submit your participant selection plan or policy, and that is because those folks aren't coming through the CE system, so we want to make sure that there's some sort of prioritization plan in place. Okay. I think we're
All
back to you,
right.
Nilüfer.
Thank you. So as you'll see on the application table of contents, we've included the pertinent sections that you will be asked to fill out. So all the sections that are written in blue text, those sections are required regardless of what funding stream or streams you are applying for. The the sections in green are the funding streams, and I've listed asterisks on each section on the slide to indicate that you would only be required to do the questions in that section if you are in fact applying for funding in said section. Everyone will be required to indicate whether they will be seeking emergency shelter, outreach, rapid rehousing, or homeless prevention funds. But that is the extent to which everyone is required to answer a question about all four funding streams. If you answer yes, then you'll see the long application for emergency shelter funding, street outreach, rapid rehousing, or homeless prevention. From there, you'll also see the portions that have an essay question, portions that ask for a specific attachment, as Jim had mentioned in previous slides. You'll also be able to get a good look at what we're looking for through those questions. And if nothing else, there may be some conditional logic in the specific funding stream portions of the application. That is more so based on the fact that a couple of the questions build upon each other a little bit. So if you see a question show up or become required, it might be because of how you responded. And so double check upon that to make sure that what you are saying accurately reflects the reality of what you are otherwise encountering or where your organization is at this time.
All right, now we're going to pop out of this PowerPoint and go on to the application. So you're forewarned. It's like turning the lights out when we've been watching a movie in class, right? So not to make you all dizzy. Okay, I need to share my other screen. All right, you should be seeing now the IHCDA webpage for the Emergency Solutions Grant. Just wanted to highlight the things, the resources we have on here. If you visit this page, you will find the RFA document, a PDF of the questions. It has its issues and kind of leaves out the attachments, so it's not a perfect view of things. And then the application link. Down below here, you'll also find our shelter, street outreach, rapid rehousing, and homeless prevention manuals. We are currently in the process. Nilüfer's driving us through updating these manuals right now, but they are currently, this is what we have in place. So these resources here would be great for you to look at if you do have other questions. Something else to point out, if you weren't at Development Day where we announced this, we do have some client file checklists present on the website for each of the project types. All right, I know we're at 3:08, and I told you you might get done a little early, so I want to keep going so we have time for questions. So this is what you'll see when you go to the application form. Now, I was able to finally get the tab function to work. So you'll see all of the pages are tabbed at the top, and this makes it a lot easier to go through the entire application without putting in information. So we're happy to make that work. Some basic overview organizational information we want to see, your UEI, your address, your contact info. If like Nilufar said, our conditional logic that pops in, if your CEO or executive director isn't the one that signs and you click no, you'll get the opportunity to fill in who will be the signer for that, and that'll just make things smoother when we get to the agreement process. Now, probably since I clicked that, it's going to give me an error with the other ones, but we'll see. Let's see. So, and then the only thing that's not really contact information type things on this overview page or organizational page is a brief description of your mission and services. Kind of what's your elevator pitch? What's at the top of your web page about your organization? Now, as Nilufar pointed out, you're able to save at any point on any of these pages, and it would bring up the dialog boxes to complete the steps that she covered, or you can hit next as you go through here. The other option, and what I'm going to take advantage of here, is using the tabs. So both will get you to the next pages. On the threshold requirements page, we're asking again if you're a 501c3. That is a requirement for this funding. So you're going to say yes and attach your status letter. Do you have an active UEI? And then you're going to attach a entity report or something documenting your current your active enrollment in that system. Same with Secretary of State. And then here's where you'll tell us how you're working with the local regional planning council on homelessness. This is a requirement that our ESG folks are working with this council to coordinate homeless services. So you're going to get a chance to tell us how you're doing that. Are you going to the monthly meetings or quarterly meetings? Are you doing case conferencing? Are you accepting referrals through CE? Really the extent of all those things. Does your program do 100% of your clients meet HUD's definition for homelessness? And then as you hover over that, it will bring up those definitions that are in the RFA. A little lengthy, but we wanted you to have that right there as you answer that. Remember, all of your clients would have to meet one of those categories. We want to know if you have any unresolved findings, either with us or with HUD in the past 3 years due to non-compliance. If you answer yes, you'll explain that. It's not an automatic disqualification if we know about it and we know what's going on and you're taking the correct measures to get back on track. So, but you do need to tell us what's going on there. Your match commitment letter, this can capture your entire match commitment. If you're applying for more than one funding type, you can capture everything in this letter. Your general liability insurance policy, just the evidence that you have that coverage. Your fidelity bond insurance documentation. And I saw we had a question about some of the levels on these. I don't have that right off the top of my head, but I will. We will get that for you in our follow-up. And let's see, we do have a question there. Let's see. Let me see if I'm able to unmute you, Pam. Okay, go right ahead with your. You might need to unmute yourself now, but Pam, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. I have a question, and I don't know that you've hit it yet, so if I'm ahead of you, I'm sorry. But there's a question about administering federal grants for the last 5 years and listing everyone that you've administered. Is that true? Do we really have to answer that?
You don't have to be completely exhaustive. What we want to know from that question, and I'm glad you called that out, and you are jumping a little bit ahead, but I'll allow you to
I'm
do
sorry.
that.
I thought I was following you, and then I thought I missed it.
You're good. You're good. We want to know that you have experience. You don't have to be exhaustive and give us a book there. I'll put a little more of a descriptor in there.
Okay.
But just who you have who you've had grants with, so that we
Okay.
can know you know these things and can be off and running.
I don't even know if I could find the last 5 years.
So
Last
you can,
2 maybe.
yeah,
Okay.
and
Thank
that would
you.
be a good response.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it. Okay. We will move right along here. So again, some of the levels, the regs do stipulate the amount of bond coverage. So we will get that in our follow-up Q&A that comes out with these slides. Okay. For the financial management tab, and here's where Pam was getting to a couple of these questions. How many years of experience does your organization have in managing federal grants? You're just going to put in that response. Have you administered anything other than the ESG grant? And then here's what she was speaking to. I understand this could be a long, long, long answer, but just give us a good idea of your experience, summarize it, and you should be good to go there. Here's where you would attach your 990.
Jim,
And
there's also a
yeah,
good question here. Federal
oh, good.
pass-through required. So would we, so I think this person is asking, in addition to receiving either a grant directly from the federal government, if they were also a subrecipient, let's say from the state, but the state got the funding from the federal.
Yeah, yeah, you could tell us about that too.
Mhm.
This isn't a requirement where if you miss something miss a grant that you get, we don't have some checklist where we're double checking your response. Again, we just want to know that you've got some good experience.
And there's one more question. If you've
Hmm.
administered other grants, but not federal or state grants, it is not necessarily going to be a deal breaker for you to receive ESG funding this year if you haven't had federal or state grants necessarily. If anything, it would be good for us to know either way. It's
Hmm.
the only thing I would say is just we ask for the specific experience with federal and state grants because there is a lot more stringent requirements and a lot more administrative work that is involved with a federal or state grant that is slightly different than a grant from another source. We just want to be intentional to make sure that we are getting a full picture. And if we were to select your organization for funding, that we would have an understanding of how to set you up for success.
Exactly. Thank you for popping in there with that, Nilufar. Last thing I'll cover on this tab. This is where you would attach your financials, and again, we want to see like what you're updating your board on. What are your financials that your organization uses, even if it's not exactly called these things. But we'll be utilizing some other folks in our organization to do kind of a financial review, very basic, just to make sure we're making good investments. There's a staff and board page that really, I believe this one is all just attachments. So this is where you'd attach your board roster, your board bylaws, and your ESG or organization chart showing everybody or just your ESG folks. And then we get into our 4 project type pages. So here's where that conditional logic catches in again. If you're not applying for emergency shelter, you kick no and go right on. If you are, you select yes, and then it's going to ask you the emergency shelter questions. So right off the bat, you tell us your funding request, the counties you're serving, and then if you've received these ESG in the past few years, I think we've had maybe a little bit of a bug with this function on this one, so we'll be looking at that. And then we want to know if there was any disallowed costs that you ran into with any of those grants. We want to know if you received funding from an entitlement city. If your question is, what is an entitlement city? You likely don't receive funding from an ESG entitlement city. There's about 5 of them in the state that do their own ESG awards. Then we get into your essay questions. So we want to know how you identify clients for your program. So how do you identify them? What's your client intake process, your enrollment process? How do you partner with and connect your clients to other resources? What's your plan for improvement in client feedback? Do you have a built-in system where you're hearing from clients on things that they think that can be improved? Have you taken steps on those in the past already? I want you to expand on those things for us. Again, this is really another place where you'll tell us how you connect in with your regional planning council. How are you advancing the efforts of the entire state COC, which ESG is a partner with, to address homelessness across our state and in your region? This is where your opportunity is to make any explanations on your CAPER results. So we'll be polling for 12 months. It's maybe an odd 12 months. It's not your program year, but we wanted to get a 12-month snapshot of your outcomes. So if you run that yourself and you're like, hey, something's weird here, we know what it is, we want to tell you about it. We had this thing happen and it affected our results, and this is your opportunity to give some context. You can put NA if you don't need to there. And then the two additional attachments if they're needed as well. It does look like we have the fire inspection. Yeah, the fire inspection report is required. Sorry about that. It's the health department one. If you're not serving food, you can move right on from that one. Okay, for our outreach, we're going to go through those questions, very similar to the shelter request, your amount, your counties, your same questions there on previous use, entitlement city question. Then we get to our essay questions. There's some slight differences from the shelter questions here. We do want to know how you identify, how you do enrollment and intake. But then we want to know your street outreach program plan. How are you attacking street outreach? Like what's driving that? What's your strategy behind that? Want you to expand on that there. Want to know how you're connecting those street outreach clients to other shelters, to permanent housing resources. Again, we're engaging these folks to help with their immediate need and then help them get housed. So how are you making that happen? We want to know, again, similar to shelter, how you're enhancing the region's efforts to address homelessness. And then you've got your optional CAPER response question. We'll look at rapid rehousing here. So total requests there at the top, counties served, same questions on previous use, entitlement city. We want to again know how you're identifying your clients. That should start with, I'll give you a cheat there. It should start with you're getting a referral from coordinated entry and then seeing if they qualify for your program. And then so we want to see what you're doing as far as intake and enrollment beyond that. We want to know how many households are in need of this service in your region, in your service area, per the coordinated entry data. This is something you can find on your CAPER. We want to know, what's the length of time from project entry for somebody before they have a housing move-in. We know you can't control everything with that, but it's a good metric to look at as well. We want you to describe how you're housing folks quickly and helping folks maintain that housing. What's your strategy for engaging partners, and how are you going to, help maintain relationships and get other resources in for that client for additional tenant support? A landlord question here, what's your pipeline for identifying and recruiting them? How do you engage and retain your landlord partners? A similar question that you've seen regarding program improvement plan and client feedback. So we want to know how you're taking that into account. Again, similar question as the other project types, with how you're working with the COC to address homelessness, and in that CAPER context. Then our last project type is homeless prevention. Some similar questions there that we've already talked about a few times here. Disallowed costs, entitlement city. Want to know how you identify, if your participant prioritization plan really covers a lot of that, you can just say that in this one. If you feel like your plan covers enough of the specifics of how you're doing intake and enrollment and identification, you can say see attached prioritization plan. We're not trying to create extra work for you. We just want to get a good idea of what you're doing. Again, we're going to have you talk about how you're working with program partners to provide additional tenant support, how you're working with landlords, and then, this homeless prevention, it's a temporary program. So they're not going to be on it for a permanent basis. What's their housing plan after their exit? Again, we're asking for that program improvement. A lot of these, if you are, requesting, say you're asking for all 4 project types, which I know a lot of you out there are, copy and paste. If you need to add some specifics by the project type, do that. But if you've got a program improvement plan and client feedback plan that's the same response for all these, just take it and paste it in this response. Same with these similar questions, where we don't want you to keel over from having to answer the same thing 4 times. But for those that might just be doing a shelter request or homeless prevention request, it was important to have that captured. So once you get through all of those project pages, you'll reach the application submission page. Right here, you can take another look at that RFA document that goes into a little more detail. You can stroll through there, because we're going to have you certify that you've read that and that what you're saying, you're attesting to, that you meet the different qualifications and requirements. Then we want to have name and title of the person that's submitting, and you'll have opportunity to, this says review answers, since I haven't put anything in. Once there's information in all the required boxes, you'll have a submit button. You can click that, and then it will be off to us, and you can be on to your next fire that you have to put out, because we know that's the case. All right, I know we threw a lot of information at you. We have just a couple more slides. I'm going to stop sharing this information so we can get back to our PowerPoint, and then we will stay on for any questions that you've got.
All right. Thank you, Jim, for going over the application. I've also been answering some of the questions that I could get in the chat. Try to get as much as I can, but we will continue answering questions as we go on. I want to give a real quick, Jim, I don't see the PowerPoint.
It's coming here. I
My
clicked the
bad.
wrong thing here. So we'll see what we've got here. All right.
All right. So I know like Jim said, we threw a lot at you. It was a lot of client eligibility thresholds for organizations to get funding, a lot of content. But if nothing else, there are some good reminders. If nothing else, your main takeaway from this presentation is that the RFA is due on May 29th at 5 p.m. Eastern. So even if you log out and then realize that you barely learned anything, you do know that it's due on May 29th. We will only be able to consider both complete and submitted applications. We do not have access to applications that are in progress. Just keep that in mind. We cannot accept late submissions unless approval was granted beforehand. If you have an emergency because life happens, please send Jim or I an email or contact us. The sooner the better. If nothing else, just know JOT form allows you to save your progress, and you can always go back and review. Start early. Do not do this at the last minute. We have been telling people this for a few years. Sometimes they have other priorities, and we understand, but believe me when I tell you, it is in your best interest to start early. Even if you don't finish the whole application in one sitting, just doing a little bit here and there can really make a big difference. Start by gathering all of your supplemental documentation and make sure you know what the essay questions are asking for and give a complete response that addresses all the points in the essay question. We have those posted on the website. Double check that you have actually completed all relevant portions of your application. And, if nothing else, when in doubt, ask us. We're here to help and we want to see you succeed. I have listed the emails for our general communication community services team, as well as Jim and myself. I have also in the chat pasted our names and email addresses so that you can copy and paste from the chats as well. And with that, we are right at 3:30.
Yes, and we apologize. We're a little long-winded. I'll take the blame on that. But we will stick around as long as you have questions and are sticking around. I saved a couple that were up earlier in the chat, and I want to address those here before we open it up to others, just so I don't lose track of them. So let me see what those were. So we had somebody asking again about the 30-day piece on the rapid rehousing homeless prevention items for housing stability case management and housing search and placement. So it is the, let me get back to that. Sorry if I'm making anybody seasick with the quick slides here. So I'll just speak to it as I've now gotten the application mad at me, or the PowerPoint mad at me. It is the housing stability case management that you cannot do more than a month's worth of case management, while that client they might be let's just use this scenario. We have a client that's in a shelter. They're enrolled in CE. You know that you've gotten a CE referral. This is the person you're going to be working with. You want to start providing case management, so you're ahead of the game with them. So you do that. Now 30 days rolls around and they're not in a unit yet. You cannot use the ESG funds to continue providing that case management service. You can still be doing housing search and placement because you're searching and placing, but that case management piece cannot be covered by ESG after that first 30 days. Now they get housed. Now they're required to have that 30 days, that once a month case management. So hopefully that clears that up. Feel free to reach out if you have a question if I didn't clarify that well enough. Then we had a question about the 2 months and last month, or first and last, with paying those upfront costs with getting someone housed. So it's a security deposit. So if the landlord is requiring a security deposit, the amount of the security deposit that you can pay with ESG funds can be up to 2 months rent. So you're not paying 2 months rent, but the amount of the security deposit that you can cover is up to the value of 2 months rent. So you can pay that along with last month's rent if they require that last month's be paid. And then your first month's rent that you pay, because you'll be paying a portion at least of their first month's rent as well, but that will come from the regular rental assistance line item. We previously had a first month's rent line item, but we didn't need to have it and it was causing confusion. So hopefully that made that a little clearer. But too much security deposit, you can do last month's if it's required with your current month. Okay, those were the two I had saved. Now I see that we do have questions. Looks like I'm gonna just see. I'm gonna stop sharing my PowerPoint here. And then we will go to Heather. I think I've got it to where you can unmute. Let me see here. Okay, I've allowed your mic and then you should be able to unmute, Heather.
Hi, thank you very much.
Yes.
Appreciate the presentation. We will be first-time applicants, and so
Okay.
everything is new here. And we have, I'm supporting two organizations that one of them is a more well-established shelter. They've got a, SAM.gov, and they're all set up and have handled some complex grants before.
Okay.
And there's a neighboring shelter that serves a population that the primary one doesn't serve, that has a whole bunch of empty beds because they have no staff. They're all volunteer, and they can't admit more people into that shelter until they get some staffing. And so they don't really have the capacity to apply for a state grant for the first time at this stage. So we're wondering if the primary shelter can partner with, manage the grant, kind of supervise that work. Would the secondary organization, they are 501c3 and they meet like basic threshold criteria, but they've never even received any grants. They're like all volunteer run, but it's a very nice shelter that they've built, and even more attractive, I think, than the bigger one. So anyway, can they be like a subcontractor, like for some of the like case management, food, things like that? Or
Yeah.
how will we structure a partnership
Yeah.
like that?
First off, I'll say shoot Neelafar and I an email, and we can have a longer conversation and make sure
Oh, that
that
would be great.
you're equipped. But for the sake of everybody else here too, I'll just say I do think that's a possibility. The organization that would be kind of essentially that more veteran organization would be the recipient. And so they would be on the line for all the requirements. They would be the ones doing the claims, having the expenses, all of that. And then what we'd like to see really is an MOU with that other organization, just stating what that partnership entails. And then, yeah, I think that would be totally fine. Now, the more veteran org, did you say, do they receive funding from ESG yet?
They haven't gotten ESG before, no, but they
Okay.
have had other significant funding. So, and then are we just talking about like $50,000 grants pretty much, or is there an opportunity to actually fund a position through this program?
So that is the nature of the beast here. And with us, our entire award being just under 4 million, our shelter awards, which from the brief description sounds like what you'd be applying under. Yeah, we typically don't see those at much high level, much higher than 50,000, in that range, maybe 60. So it does require other funding streams. It has the required 100% match. So the way that HUD looks at that is, it's, you receive 50,000, but you're really putting 100,000 into the program. That's how they look at it. I know it doesn't feel like that when you're boots on the ground, but that would be our range. And I did see another question kind of asking about range for rapid rehousing and homeless prevention. Those can be larger asks because we have typically have fewer recipients in those. Typically we're awarding around the $100,000 level for those. some of it differs based on the situation, but I think that would be a safe range for that question we got there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. The next person I see that we have a question for is Joyce. I've allowed your mic and you can unmute and ask away.
Okay, my question is, last year and in the past years, we had a form we had to have signed by our local government. Will you guys be sending that out? Because I can't find it.
Yes.
Are you speaking about the local government approval form for shelter
Yes.
awards?
Yes.
Okay, that would be sent out once we finish the RFA period and have identified who will be receiving funding. From there, we will, once you know you are getting shelter funding, then we'll go through the steps of making sure that you have all that information at hand.
Okay, I got one other quick thing.
Yeah,
sure.
Certified with the state of Indiana. Is that our I'm not sure. I don't remember.
So that's your Secretary of State.
Right.
So like the IN biz. So it can be an entity report just from that site.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes. Neelafar, did you catch any other questions that were in the comments that?
Yeah, I just responded to one, so I need to go back. There is one. Okay. Are there any red flag words to avoid in the application?
That's a good question. And I'm not sure that I can really answer it. I think it would be important to kind of look and see what the temperature is, as you're looking at state government and federal government for these funding streams, and use your best judgment. I can tell you there's not a layer of review that our staff will have that should concern you, but anything you submit could be looked at by others in state government and federal government potentially. So I would be careful not to use some of those buzzwords that we might know that can be might catch you up. And feel free, if you have questions around that, shoot us a message. We can jump on a call and maybe talk a little more free.
There is also another question. What is required for a match commitment verification? Just the award letter?
So what we want to see there is, because you're committing to matching the funds. If you, we don't need to see like a letter from United Way or Community Foundation saying you've got this grant or this grant. You would detail that in your letter. You're going to be saying, hey, we are committing to match 100% of our ESG request at $60,000. We have this grant and this grant in place that we expect to cover these funds, or we look to be to have some volunteer in kind that will help us get to that match. You don't have to be exact with it, but it needs to get across that you're committing those funds and that you've got something in place, even if it's private funds that from donations that you'll be using. At the end of the program year, you will be submitting documentation showing exactly like where those funds came from and how they were used. This is more just kind of you're putting your name down that you commit those funds.
And then another question, is there anywhere that tells us where is the expected results for the caper?
That's something we can look into getting you. I'm not as big of an expert on HMIS as I maybe could and should be. So if they're putting out, different metrics that they're saying, hey, here's a metrics you'd like to that we want to see you hitting on, data errors or data timeliness or some targets on exits to permanent destinations. I'm not sure what those are off the top of my head. We will look into that, but just know you'll be ranked against your peers. So it's not that we're expecting 100% of folks to be exiting to positive destinations, and if that's not what you're hitting, you're getting points taken away. It'll be on kind of a spread, and so I think a lot of the good programs, well, I don't mean to say it that way. Our overall in our report to HUD last year for our overall CAPER, I think we were around 78% exits to positive destinations. I think our overall target was in the 80s, so we didn't meet our overall target. But I think you want to be doing as good as you can, but 70s, 80s to positive destinations, that's good. And in anything that HMIS is telling you around timeliness, error rates, or any other data standards, that's where you want to be. And then we'll pull some documentation for you.
We have multiple people saying that since it is short notice to get the current fire inspection, is it possible to submit a fire extinguisher inspection done in March and a fire security system inspection done in January 2026? This person is saying that the most recent fire inspection was July 2025, so not sure what the fire department would come out prior to July 2026.
Yeah, I understand. There's things out of your control with those items. Submit what you have and maybe provide an explanation or a plan of what your next inspection would be. We want to make sure, and it's stipulated in the regulations that certain items are met and that folks are safe. We don't want to run in, and I know that you all don't want to run into anything where safety is compromised. But if you're not able to get something, I know the applications due just in a couple weeks. Submit what you have with an explanation, and then try to get something scheduled, in the next 6 months, and then you could supply that result to us.
And then another question, are there any circumstances where ESG would reduce or eliminate the matching requirements, like a request that you would make in the application?
Not at this moment. We don't have a procedure for that. I would just say, if you have concerns on the match, reach out to us. And we can provide kind of some guidance on matching. You can do a lot with volunteer time and with donated items. That the in-kind route can be very helpful. And then some of the funds you already receive could potentially be that match. So I'm happy to talk through that with you all, or whoever has questions there. But we're not able to waive any of those at this point.
And then we'll have this be the last question, it looks like in the chat. Our shelters are housing in apartments up to 1 year. One is crisis housing. Will this qualify since it's not a large multi-person facility? I would encourage this individual to email us, give us a fuller picture of what their shelter is like and how it works. So maybe we can have a better understanding of what's going on and give guidance that most reflects the organizational structure or service structure that you have. Okay.
So our next steps, we will wrap up our meeting here. Thank you for hanging on. Sorry for going over. I will schedule 2 hours next year. So we will get this recording saved and uploaded so that you all can view it, or that anybody else on your staff can be sent it. We will get the PowerPoint slides out to you all, and then we'll put together some of this Q&A into a document and get that posted on our website as well. Give us till Monday for some of these items. We will get them up as quickly as we can, but a little bit of time, a little bit of grace would be appreciated. Again, reach out to us if you have any questions, And thanks for all the great questions and your attendance here. And we look forward to another great year of ESG.
And if you need to follow up with us again, or you're concerned about something getting lost in the inbox of doom, email us again. You are not a bother. We want to be of service to you so that we can also set you up for success.
All right. Thank you all. We're going to end our session. Have a great day.